Hello and welcome to another episode of Showcasing North Leeds, where I'm on a mission to find and interview all the local businesses in North Leeds and beyond. And I'm delighted to be welcomed today I'm delighted to be joined by Alexis from VA Heritage. And Alexis is uniquely different in interior design, specialising in period buildings.
Yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I've been going for 5 years now.
That's right.
So thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me.
No worries. First I'd like to ask, why is it that you do what you do?
I guess it's one of those things where I've always been really interested in architecture and buildings and how people connect with spaces. Never really wanted to get into architecture per se and be an architect. So interior design just felt like a logical fit because you are connecting more on an emotional level with people. And I just really love old buildings. So to be able to work on an old building and with the client and kind of bring out their personality and really kind of make the building and enhance people's lives is something that is really important to me.
I want to touch on that. So you said the enhancing people's lives. How is it that you find that you enhance people's lives in what you do?
I guess it's one of those things where, particularly through COVID, people spent more and more time at home. It's your environment. It's where you go to relax or where you want to entertain or when you want to raise children. And it's just such an integral part of your life. And it's also impacts how you feel, how you wake up in the morning, whether you have a restful sleep, whether, it's kind of ticking all of the boxes for what you need to do to function. And if you've not quite got that right, you can kind of feel like things just don't feel that right.
Okay.
And you can't always put your finger on what it is, but generally it will come back to your environment. So if you can have a conversation with a client and help them figure out what maybe is missing or what needs to be done, go through the kind of design journey with them and then change that space to be something that they never thought it could be, or just sometimes it might even just be little tweaks, but ultimately they walk into that space and they feel different.
Okay. So how would they, like you said there that they can't put their finger on it.
Yeah.
At what point would someone or should someone come in contact with you?
Obviously if they're doing something where it's kind of being driven by a change in that maybe you bought a new home and it just needs remodeling, or it just is completely new to you and you need help. If you've been in your property and you've already decided that you're going to remodel, extend, always at the early stage, always when you're starting thinking about what you're going to do. If you're not necessarily going down the kind of slightly more drastic route of remodeling or extending, it is just kind of when you're thinking that maybe you've outgrown the space, or maybe you're thinking that your kids have grown up and it needs to change, or maybe that, I don't know, you've started working from home when you never used to, or you've got a hobby that you feel like can't be accommodated in the space. I guess it's just when you've just got that sense of you want to change.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then going back to the period buildings, I know you said you love architecture and love period buildings. What is it about them for you?
For me, it's the fact that whatever the period, whether it's got some kind of, Tudor-esque exposed timberwork and trusses, or it's Victorian or Edwardian, whatever kind of design period it is, it's the craftsmanship that went into that. You know that somebody has spent time and thought process on how it's going to look inside and out, that most things have been handmade or handcrafted, and it's that real labour of love, and it's built to last. So we've got buildings that are hundreds of years old and they look better than some new builds. And I don't mean in terms of the fact that they've got that timeless romantic quality. It's just the fact that they're not going to fall down. They're not exposed to asbestos. That's all more modern materials. You've not got that risk of concrete and schools closing because you know, those materials were generally of the earth, sandstone, clay, you know, it's just the quality of the material.
And then there's a lot of period features that people love as well in their homes, and sometimes unfortunately people will buy the home and the previous owners destroyed or got rid of. When someone's got a period home and they unfortunately don't have all the features there, is it something you can help with in terms of bringing them back in from somewhere else, remodelling or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those things where it's a delicate balance, because you don't want to feel like you're trapped in a museum. And so I think sometimes when people think about a traditional building, you know, if you thought about a stately home, Harewood House for example, or Temple Newton, that's trapped at a point in time because they want to reflect how somebody lived and how it looked then and there. If you've got a home, it needs to evolve, obviously, as you know, as technology's changed, our needs change. I mean, we didn't used to have indoor bathrooms, you know, they're all things that we definitely want now. But most, you know, traditional homes might not have had them. There is that thing about definitely reinstating, without a doubt, and it's just the balance of trying to get it right, the scale, looking at the room, trying to figure out what feature you want. So you can definitely incorporate. You don't necessarily have to slavishly do that. It's kind of really understanding what it is about that home that you love and what it is that you're trying to achieve. And it is an interesting one, particularly if you're looking at listed buildings where there's so much more rules and regulation. And part of it's the storytelling. So do you want the building to be read, as in how it's evolved? So I was looking at Calverley Old Hall recently, and I managed to spend a bit of time there. And that's a Grade 1 listed building. It's evolved from 15th, 16th up to the 20th century. It's had different changes, and then they're now trying to make it so that it can be rented as a holiday accommodation. So they're having to put new elements in. But it's, do you want to read all the changes, or do you want to make it authentic? So you might then paint everything and then you can't see how it's evolved.
Right.
So sometimes I think it's so subjective, but it is about really understanding the building and understanding the client.
So is it commercial as well as resi?
Yes.
Okay, so you do both, that's why you went into both of them. Okay. For me, I'd more focus on the resi, just from my background and what I know. So if someone's wanting to make a change in their home, something doesn't feel quite right, are they going to build an extension on? At what point should they contact you? Is it before the architect, after the architect?
My preference would be before, or at the same time as you're having conversations with the architect. And the reason I say that is because an architect, if they don't offer interior design as a service and part of what they do, they look at things from a slightly different angle than an interior designer would. So an architect is very much focused on the space and dimensions and what you can legally put in that space, and boundary lines and party walls and building regulations and all things that are very important but can shape the design in one direction. As an interior designer, I'm looking at it more from the practicality of how the space is going to be used and layering in on that what kind of pieces of furniture or what kind of things is going to go into that room. Some architects might ask that question, but if they don't, you run the risk of a space being designed without really thinking about all of those different components. So you might have a wall going somewhere that's going to hinder an existing sofa that you've already got. Or if you're thinking about, I don't know, you want a utility room, but you've not really had that kind of conversation with the client, with the architect. It's kind of the fact that I'm looking at it from how are you going to live in it, how do you want it to feel, how long are you going to live there? And as I say, some architects will ask those questions, but it's the feeling bit that can often get missed.
Okay.
So if you have the conversations at the same time, you'll get this more rounded solution.
Okay.
And if I'm working with the architect, we'll have those kind of conversations as well to make sure that we both are working together for the client.
So it can work where they get an architect but they get you in at the same time, or you and then get the architect but soon after. So it can work, but you work together with the architect is the most important part of it.
Ultimately, yeah, because I think the last thing you want to do is have gone down the route where you think you finalise the designs with an architect, then you've got planning approval, then I look at it, and because I'm looking at it from a different angle, I might raise something that then either means you need to go back through planning, or that you need some changes making, or that you think, no, I won't make those changes, but down the line you regret not doing it.
Yeah, okay. And then what's the process then? Because interior design for me, again, you can set me straight because I will no doubt be wrong with this, but interior design for me, I always think of colours that are on trend, what people are looking for. I think of like your what do you call, like accessories, like your cushions and everything else. What is the process? What is it that you would do with a client to make the space right for them?
First of all, I would say that when in regards to trends, that really is not something that I look at. And for me, if you're working with a client and you're looking at, as I say, their likes, dislikes for colours, textures, patterns, design styles, all of those kind of things, how they're going to live their life, layer all of that in, and then look at the building, you're then looking at what makes that building special. Add all that information together, then it kind of makes what's trendy a bit invalid. Because if you're making it personal for the client and you're making it specific for the building, then you're creating something that is uniquely different to the client. It's therefore specific to them, it resonates with them, it then will feel a bit timeless, so that it doesn't then feel, once you've finished a room, that it's already dated, because the colour's changed, or the shape of the furniture's changed, or we've gone from teal to hot pink, or we've gone from summer to autumn. It's like all of that kind of disappears, and it's just kind of noise in the background. So for me, it's really not about trends. The way that I work with a client is to go through the process of getting to know the client, understand what they're trying to achieve, what they're wanting to do with the space, understand the building, and then a lot of it is then spatial planning, so trying to figure out how to work with the space, or if it's, if they've got designs drawn up by the architect, figure out what's going to go where. If they're keeping furniture, it might be that it's going back in the same room, or it might be that it needs to go somewhere else and be celebrated. It might be artwork that you're using as a reference point, in which case again that's going to drive the designs. So there's all this information that you need to kind of take on board, which is all really valid, and then kind of the design process then evolves off the back of that. So it is then kind of getting into specifics around the design for whichever the space is, the products, because a big part of it is understanding the budget you're working towards, where you're going to get them, lead times, delivery costs, all of that kind of thing goes into the pot of what's the client trying to achieve and what dates are you working towards, when does if they're having building work, when do they need all the products on site by. There's a lot to it. It's more than cushion fluffing.
More than giving them the chocolate.
Yeah, it's more like, oh, here's this nice cushion, there we are, job done.
So then with it then, it sounds like it's a client, let's go to someone who's in their period home at the minute, they're boarding house, and it doesn't quite work for whatever reason. They feel like their kitchen diner is too far away from where the kids are playing, and they want to be able to merge. So they would come to you and say, this is what we want the space to achieve, but it's not doing that. So how can we go about achieving that? And would you go to the point of like, I know obviously you need to get an architect, but how they might be able to knock a wall down or potentially incorporate something or moving things around to give them the right living space?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of knocking walls down, that's definitely not something that I would just, break out and sledgehammer.
No, yeah, of course, yeah.
I think it's really about understanding where a client is trying, like what a client's trying to achieve, what budget they've got available, and then it's then working with that client. And then if there's a need for an architect, absolutely bring an architect in. I wouldn't feel that it's my place to start knocking walls down and saying, because you need structural engineers, there's all sorts of different things that you need to factor into a project. And I think that for me it is more about the collaborative approach. So it's about building relationships and building trust, not just with the client but with different providers. So whether that's a planning consultant, structural engineer, mechanical and electrical engineers, if someone's wanting to create a home cinema, it's about really understanding that and then working with, whether that's to introduce the client to somebody if they've not already got a contact in mind, or working with someone they've already brought into the project.
So really then, so someone could speak to you first. Do you have the contacts that you can then...
Absolutely, yeah. I've over the years I've built up some amazing contacts with people. So whether that's a building contractor, lighting engineer, architect, you name it, specialist plasterer, line plastering, you name it, I've more than likely got somebody that I could introduce a client to. Because for me it is really important that the people that you work with have got a similar sort of thought process to you, that they respect the building, that they're all about quality of workmanship and delivering the right outcome for a client.
Okay, thank you for that. I was going to say, I always like to ask as well, is there anything that I've not asked that I should have asked?
I don't think so, no. I mean, I think it's such a difficult one because, especially when we're talking about residential, someone's home it's so personal, it's so private, and they do need to feel like that the person and the people that they're working with, that they get them, that there's that level of trust. And I think that's, for me, is really important, that that fit is there. And I think when you've never worked with an interior designer, it's really difficult then to know, what do we do? How do we work? And are we suitable for you? And there's so many programs out there that kind of make it look like anyone can be an interior designer, anyone can say they've got an eye for colour, but for me there's a lot more to it than that. I've got a degree in heritage interior design. It matters to me that when I talk about things that I feel like I've got a voice of authenticity. It's not about only for the rich and famous, only if you're doing your whole house. It's about anyone with a need who needs help, and generally that's because nobody has the time to dedicate to it.
I suppose that's a good question then. So with regards to what you would do, you can help people want to change a room or want to change a whole house. It doesn't have to be everything. It can be something that doesn't work in terms of the space for them, for you.
Definitely. I mean, it's one of those things where it can feel quite daunting to change your whole home, without a doubt. And then you've got the logistics of it all. So I'm more than happy to work with the client on one room or multiple rooms or the whole home. It might be that when we start working, it makes sense to design all of the rooms so that a client knows what it will look like when it's finished. But it might be that they've got the mood boards, they've got the FF&E, which is basically the shopping list, where to buy it from, how much it costs, lead times and all of the rest of it, and a floor plan of where everything goes. And then they can say, right, we're going to do XYZ room now, and then we'll do so many rooms later. But in their mind, they know what it all looks like. Or it might be that they just want to do one room. But I try and be as flexible as possible, because I know that people's, whether it's a budget or a time constraint, is all different, and it's one of those things where I think sometimes you want to just see how it goes, whereas other people are more like, no, I want to do it all, especially if they've just bought a new home and it feels nothing like them, and they bought it because of the potential of what it can deliver, as opposed to how it looks from day one.
Would you work with somebody who has an eye themselves in terms of what they're after? Because what I always think of with interior designers, again, is that it's, you mentioned rich and famous, but it's more people who are time poor and just need to get someone in to just do something for them. If you've got someone who's got a bit more time and kind of knows what they're after, can you still work with those types of people? Because everyone thinks it's going to be a massive expense and it's something that they can do themselves, so why would they get somebody else in? Would you work with someone who has an idea and just needs like a little bit of advice for little things as well.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has got a sense of what they like. You generally know what you're drawn towards, whether it's clothes or shoes. You know, you've got that kind of idea. So absolutely work with them without a doubt. Sometimes it's that they kind of know what they want, but they want something a little bit bolder, or it might be that they've got a very clear idea, but what I could bring as a kind of addition to it is the fact that I've got a lot of trade accounts. So whilst there's an expense for my time, I will try and find the best product for a client. Sometimes that might be a high street product, but a lot of the times it might be a trade account product where you get discount.
Yeah.
So there's financial savings through the products that I can procure for a client that you wouldn't get yourself, which kind of can offset the cost of my fee. And then you've got the added bonus of the fact that it's already been designed for you. I've saved you time, saved you money, given you something that you wouldn't necessarily have thought about yourself or had access to. So I think for those kind of people, there's always scope to work together.
Okay. And then how can everyone find you? How does everyone find you, literally?
So I've got a website, and I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn.
What's the name?
So my website is www.vaheritage.co.uk.
I don't know if anyone says www anymore, but yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm old school. I like old buildings, so you know, you can't assume.
And go on, and then Instagram.
It's VA_heritage.
Okay. Is that the main two ways to get hold of you? Okay, that's fine. Well, thank you so much for joining me and for imparting all your wisdom.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely.
It's been great, and thank you everyone who's been listening. And as always, as you'll hear on all podcasts, please go on, like, comment, subscribe, and also on YouTube, please do comment and subscribe as well, and just help us to push it in front of as many people as possible. So thanks for listening and thanks for watching.